Hey guys, welcome back to Steel City Sports. Today we're going to be talking about the championship round of the NFL playoffs. Now, you probably see the divisional round on the screen and you're like, what are you doing? That's not the championship round. Well, I put out a video a couple days after the divisional round happened, and it ended up getting taken down by YouTube. I don't know if there was some copyright issue, but I don't have time to fight YouTube on that, so I was like, whatever. But if you're one of the few people that did get to see that, already know my thoughts on these games, but I did want to spend a couple minutes at the beginning of this video to just kind of give you my recap of the divisional round, because a lot of people didn't see my video on the divisional round. It was only up for a little bit, so I'm going to talk about that here. I'm going to put a timestamp down in the description if you want to just jump straight to my predictions for the championship round. But like I said, we're going to spend a little bit of time here. Not a lot. I'm not going to break these games down play by play, but I just want to give you some of my takeaways from these games, just because a lot of people didn't get to hear my takes on them. So we'll start off with that Texans-Chiefs game. Really was more so of a defensive-oriented game, which I kind of expected. The Chiefs have really turned into more so of a defensive-oriented team these past couple of years, and I think they won this game because of their defense. They were able to sack C.J. Stroud 8 times, and the Texans' defense kept them in this game as well. This was still a one-score game in the fourth quarter of this game, and I think the ultimate thing that swung this game for the Chiefs was DeMeco Ryans kind of made a rookie mistake. Obviously, he's not a rookie coach anymore. He's in year 2, but he's not been a head coach very long. And I think he made a really costly decision for his team in this game, going for it on 4th and 10 in Texans territory. I don't remember exactly where the ball was. I want to say it was on Houston's 35 or 40-yard line. You can correct me on that if you know for sure where they were. But they were in their own territory. It was 4th and 10. Their offense had absolutely zero momentum, and it was still a one-score game. They were down by 8 points, so it's not like they particularly needed to score on this drive or the game was over. And especially with how good the Texans' defense was playing in this game, the momentum, would say you should put the game on your defense to get a big stop, but that's not what DeMeco elected to do, and it really was the dagger for this game, because they go for it on 4th and 10, obviously don't get it. The Chiefs drive down, get the field goal, and that was kind of the end of the game. So CJ was okay in this game, didn't really, he wasn't incredible. That's really the story of the Texans right now, is their offense is a little disappointing. It was this whole season, and they won the game against the Chargers because of their defense. And then, of course, we have the penalties. Everyone was blowing up I put out a short about it. I put a video on TikTok. If you want to go look up Steel City Sports on TikTok, I do post some videos on there. You can go listen to, and everyone was blabbing about the penalties, and I think rightfully so. If you listen to me for a while, you know that I never like to be a guy that's crying about refs or blaming refs for outcomes of games, because I think typically throughout the course of a game, both sides are going to get good and bad calls, but in this one, it was just flat out egregious. There was one where they called, I don't know if it was roughing the passer or unnecessary roughness, but it was, 2 Texans defenders going to tackle Mahomes, and just from the one angle, it looked like they both smacked Mahomes in the head, but we saw it from the other camera angle where these guys didn't even touch Mahomes' head. They actually collided each other's heads. If you know the players, let me know in the comments. They collided with each other's heads to avoid hitting Mahomes, and yet the Chiefs were still given that penalty there. There was another terrible roughing the passer on Will Anderson Jr. So I did want to mention that, because that definitely was a big part of this game. It was just bad. It was really, really bad. And something I said in my initial video that got taken down was we need to start holding these refs accountable. If you're a coach and you do bad at your job, you're getting fired. If you're a coordinator and you suck at your job, you're getting fired. If you're a player and you suck at your job, you get cut. So why do the refs continually not get penalized for making bad calls and ruining outcomes of games? I still think the Chiefs would have won this game. How can you ever pick against the Chiefs, especially when they were 9.5-point favorites in Arrowhead? But that definitely is something I just wanted to touch on real quick, because that was really, really bad. So that's kind of my big outtake of that. The Texans, another thing I said in my review that got taken down, The Texans, I think they have like 8 picks because of the Deshaun trade to Cleveland. They have like 8 picks in this upcoming draft. I would spend every single one of those 8 picks on offensive linemen because it's clear that is the big thing holding this team back. They've got the quarterback, a little disappointing this year, but C.J. Stroud is a really good quarterback. You got skill position players, Nico Collins a beast. They're probably going to bring Stephon Diggs back after the Tank Dell injury. Joe Mixon had an awesome year. So your offense is set, and your defense was the reason why you were even in this game and why you beat the Chargers. The defense doesn't really need any work. So the O-line is the biggest glaring problem. I'd spend every single one of their draft picks on the O-line this upcoming draft and, also try to go out and get maybe another O-lineman in free agency because that's the thing holding Houston back. They check every other box. So now we can move on to the Lions-Commanders game. I'm still kind of in shock in this. I don't remember seeing this big of an upset for a long time. I'm sure it's happened. I'm sure there's been bigger underdogs that have won in playoff games, but since I've been watching football for about 8-9 years now, I can't remember a bigger playoff game upset than this ever. Jaden Daniels, easily the best rookie ever to do this, not only to win 12 games with a dead franchise, but to also beat a 15-win team in Detroit. I mean, it's like we've never, ever, ever seen anything like this. And we're going to legitimately now start having the conversation, is Jaden Daniels for real a top 5 quarterback in the NFL? And people might think that that's, overreacting or recency biased, but I don't think it is, just based on what we've seen, especially in the playoffs where he's gotten even better. It's not like he's on a team where he's surrounded with a ton of awesome players. He's got a couple good players, but this team lives or dies by Jaden. Literally, they're not in this spot without Jaden Daniels playing at a superstar level. So I think it's fair to have the conversation. He's obviously top 10. I don't think anyone dispute he's a top 10 QB right now. My thing I want to start bringing up is he in the top 5 already? Because, if you know the top 5, any given order, the 5 guys the past couple of years have been Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Lamar, and Herbert. Is Jaden Daniels better than Justin Herbert? If you're starting a team for the next 5-10 years, would you rather have Justin Herbert or Jaden Daniels? I think, especially with how these playoffs went out, with Herbert flaming out, throwing 4 picks, I don't think it's that crazy to put Jaden Daniels as the 5th best quarterback in football right now, especially if he wins this game against Philly. I don't even think there'd be an argument against it, So everyone's talking about Jaden Daniels right now. He's the, hottest player in the league right now for good reason. The kid is fucking insane. I mean, there's no doubting it. Words can't do justice to what this kid has done and how much he's shocked me this year, resurrecting Washington and getting them to the NFC Championship game in year 1. Think about that. Dak Prescott's been in the league for 10 years now and has never gotten to the NFC Championship game. Jaden Daniels did it in his first year with a poverty franchise. So, big congrats to him. The Lions, really disappointing. But at least with the Lions, they have a little bit of an excuse with the fact that they had 4,000 injuries on their team, particularly to the defense, which was already kind of a struggling unit. So if you're a Lions fan, yeah, this really hurts. I mean, I can't imagine the pain because everyone kind of just had them written in to go into the Super Bowl. Not me. I picked Philly. But probably 80% of the country had Detroit going to the Super Bowl, and to lose their first playoff game, especially in that fashion where they just get crushed by, I think, a worse roster, it's heartbreaking. And, this kind of goes into something that I'm going to talk about, probably I will make a separate video about, is the Lions window could close really quickly. They have the talent, they have the players, but they just lost both their awesome coordinators, and we've seen this happen before, especially with coaches like Dan Campbell, who we know he's an awesome motivator, but in terms of calling plays and schematic stuff, that's not his forte. Back when, I believe he did start out as the offensive play caller when he got the head coaching job initially, and the offense was bad. Now, given obviously they didn't have this much talent, but I don't have a whole lot of faith in Dan Campbell as a play caller, which means he's going to have to go out there and find another Ben Johnson, which the odds of that happening, probably -50 chance you're going to find another Ben Johnson, So with Aaron Glenn and Ben Johnson both gone taking head coaching jobs, I could see the Lions taking a step back next year. I kind of compare it to what the Eagles did last year. They started off really dominant. I think they started off 10-0 or 11-0, but down the stretch of that season, they were kind of exposed because their coach doesn't really offer anything, and they had terrible coordinators. And Nick Sirianni, if you don't have Sirianni surrounded by awesome coordinators, he can't really do anything. That's why I'm not a big fan of Sirianni, and I could kind of see that happening with Dan Campbell. Obviously, I'd take Campbell over Sirianni any day. Even if Sirianni wins the Super Bowl, I would still take Dan Campbell over him, but it worries me for a guy who has really nothing to do with play calling or drawing up the plays or anything like that, to lose two really good coordinators, especially Ben Johnson, who's been widely regarded as like the best offensive coordinator in the NFL these past couple years. You can maybe see a step back, especially if the coordinators they bring in just aren't very good, kind of like with what Philly had last year. That worries me, but at least they do have the stacked roster to kind of counter that. But again, so did the Eagles. The Eagles had a pretty sweet roster last year, and they went on to lose like their last 6 games and get blown out in a wild card game against Tampa in which they were favored. So that's kind of my takeaways from that game. Like I said, I'm probably going to make a separate video about Detroit's future because there's a lot to talk about there. Next was that Eagles-Rams game. My only real takeaway from that is Saquon. Saquon has got to be the best off-season acquisition of not only this year, but maybe the last 5 years. I mean, think about it. I mean, this guy is one of the best players in the NFL, one of the most impactful players in the NFL. And I think he only got like $13 million annual in his contract with Philly. Now, obviously, to you and me, $13 million is fucking insane, life-changing money. But relative to NFL contracts for elite players, $13 million, just compare that to some of the money we got these receivers getting paid. Justin Jefferson, $35 million a year. CeeDee Lamb, $34 million a year. And Saquon makes a third of what those guys are making. That is absolutely fucking crazy. So Saquon Barkley, he's the reason the Eagles won this one because Jalen Hurts continues to just not play very good. I don't think he was great against Green Bay. He wasn't very good in this one either. So maybe that could be like a worry of the Eagles going forward against this game against Washington. We're going to talk about in a little bit. But Saquon, as long as you got that guy, I think you should be a favorite basically in any game because he's just like, I can't even really put into words. Saquon Barkley is fucking insane. He's the best running back in football. That's really my big takeaway. The Rams, they put up a good fight, but ultimately they just weren't able to hang with the talent. And of course, I got to still sing the praises of the Eagles' defense, which I'm going to talk about a little more soon, in this video. But then that last game, the Sunday night game, the big heavyweight fight between the Ravens and the Bills. I picked the Bills. It was in Buffalo. They had the better QB. I don't really think that's a controversial thing to say Josh Allen's better than Lamar, especially in the playoffs, And this loss wasn't even really on Lamar because Lamar actually played very good in this game. But going forward, it's like I don't know how you could ever pick the Ravens again, especially after these last 2 years. You look at 2023, they were the 1 seed. They hosted the playoffs in Baltimore, and they had a top 5 defense in the NFL with the reigning MVP QB. Couldn't get it done that year. They changed around the team this year from less defensive-oriented to legitimately like one of the most high-powered offenses we've seen, the duo of Lamar and Derrick Henry. And yet again, they come up short. They don't even get back to the championship game this year. So going forward, I don't know how you could ever in good faith pick Baltimore to be a contending, like a Super Bowl level contending team. And we're at a point now with Lamar, it's like it doesn't really fucking matter what Lamar Jackson does in the regular season because look at time after time. Like I said, this game wasn't even really on him, but it's like, how many chances are you going to get at this? I don't know. And my last takeaway for this game for the Ravens is I think Todd Monken absolutely needs to be fired. I think he's a fucking clown, total idiot. I don't know why people out there think that Todd Monken's a good coordinator. Just because Lamar puts up good numbers, that's Lamar. That has nothing to do with Todd Monken. He's a guy who I think benefits from being the play caller for Lamar Jackson. So Todd Monken, he has time after time, these last 2 years, his play call has directly led to the Ravens falling apart in the playoffs. You go back to the AFC title game of 2023 last year against the Chiefs in Baltimore. I think the Chiefs had the number one run defense in the NFL, and what did Todd Monken want to do in that game? Try to run the ball on them, and it was a fucking train wreck, and they lost the game because of that. Then this one, the game plan was totally off. It was the exact opposite. They didn't try to really run the ball at all when you have a fucking Hall of Famer like Derrick Henry coming off one of the best seasons of his career. I've been saying this all year long. If you've listened to me this entire season, you're probably sick of hearing me say this, but I don't think it's it's not complex for how the Ravens won games this year. They fed Derrick Henry the ball, and Lamar was able to capitalize off of that. And Derrick Henry, I did a breakdown, probably halfway through this year where I looked at each individual game. I added up all the numbers, and it was every time the Ravens fed Derrick Henry 20-plus carries, they won every single game. And every time they gave him 12 or 13 under carries, they lost each game. This one, they gave him 16, so right in the middle of that. Derrick Henry should have got 25 to 30 touches in this game with ease, especially with how this game was going. So Todd Monken, to me, is a fucking idiot. He should be fired. And I don't think this is controversial. I think John Harbaugh should be fired as well. Because, again, what does Harbaugh really bring to the table? I called for Mike Tomlin to be fired, so it's only, consistent for me to call for Harbaugh to get fired as well, because they're very similar coaches in the fact that they don't really, directly impact play calling or schematic stuff. They're just kind of the CEO of the team. They're the leader of men, the motivation guy, and I just think that it's run its course. How many times are you going to get close and come up short and still get all these chances whenever you have a generational player in Lamar Jackson who actually played good in this game? So I would fire John Harbaugh. I just think it's outdated, similar to all the stuff I said about Tomlin being fired as well. It's outdated, it's stale, it's run its course. I don't think Harbaugh really brings a lot to the table in 2025. I don't get it. I've never been a big Harbaugh guy. And I think that was kind of on display in this game. He did not have a good night, and neither did his coordinator, Monken. So, just like every time I say I'm going to do a short recap, this probably ended up being 10 minutes. So, yeah, I'm sorry about that. But let's get into the actual championship round predictions right now. So now taking a look at the NFL championship round games, we're going to start off with the NFC. And if you guys have already seen my short on my NFC prediction, you guys already know I picked the Philadelphia Eagles to get to the Super Bowl, and I'm not going to pick against that. I have the Eagles winning this game. I don't think it's a sure thing. My biggest holdback or my biggest reservation for the Eagles right now is the fact that Jalen Hurts is just not playing very good. The last two games, particularly against Green Bay, he was okay, but nothing special. And then the game against the Rams last week, he was actually pretty bad. So that's my biggest worry for the Eagles, but everything else kind of checks the box. Saquon Barkley's playing at a legit MVP level. They've got all the weapons you could ever ask for on offense. And the defense is playing its absolute best football right now. And that's really the biggest reason why I'm picking the Eagles to win this game is the defense. Because this isn't the Lions' defense. Yeah, obviously it was really impressive, the fact that Washington beat Detroit. And I'm not trying to take anything away from that. But we all know the Lions, even at full strength, their defense was kind of a question. And then you factor in all those injuries, it's really kind of yeah, it makes sense. I don't know the number, but it was something like 18 defensive players injured. So when you look at it like that, it's really not too big of a surprise that Washington actually beat Detroit because they were so fucking banged up injury-wise on defense, and Jaden was just able to carve them apart in that game. That's not going to be the case with the Eagles right now. With how their defense is playing, every single unit they have on defense has elite playmaking players all over this team. The D-line, they dumped a lot of high-end draft capital to their defensive line trying to build it up, and it's paid off. Jalen Carter's a fucking monster. Jordan Davis. Their linebacker core, they have this Zach Bound, who came out of nowhere, is a legitimate Defensive Player of the Year finalist. Out of nowhere just became one of the best linebackers in football. And their secondary was their biggest problem last year. Well, they invested in those 2 rookies, and it immediately paid off. Like, I think Quinyon Mitchell is already a Pro Bowl level corner. Cooper DeJean is not that far behind. So, like I said, this is not the Detroit Lions defense they're going up, the Commanders are going up against. They're going up a far better, more complete, healthy defense that I think is you're not going to be able to just carve apart like their Swiss cheese like they did against Detroit. So that's the big thing for me. If the Commanders are going to win this game, it's going to be because Jalen Hurts just doesn't show up. The Eagles have been able to get by these other teams with Jalen not playing so great. Like, you look at the Green Bay game for Philly, the Packers had like 8,000 injuries to their receivers. Like, basically every single Green Bay receiver was hurt by the end of that game, and their offense really had no chance in that one. And then the Rams won. Again, it was Saquon. It was Saquon just having one of those all-time great games. So in this one, where it's like, I don't know, if you put the attack on, let's try to stop Saquon, which was what my Steelers did. If you go back to when the Steelers played the Eagles in the regular season, they were actually pretty successful in holding Saquon Barkley to not a very great game. So it was all on Jalen, and he performed well against my Steelers, but I don't know if that's going to be the case in this one. With how he's playing right now, the concussion thing could still be affecting Jalen Hurts right now. So I don't know. That is kind of worrisome. As someone who's picking the Eagles, that's my biggest concern right now, is Jalen Hurts not playing very good football. And it's the complete opposite of that with Jane Daniels, who's playing the best football we've seen in a long, long time. The best rookie season ever. It's not even up for debate. And I think if you were to just ask like 100 NFL fans that aren't fans of the Eagles or Commanders, just ask them, who do you want as your quarterback going forward, Jalen Hurts or Jane Daniels? I think a large majority are probably going to take Jay Daniels. Because like I said, and then we can move on, but just reiterating my point, it's not like Jane Daniels has this all-star team around him. It's not like he's surrounded with a bunch of sweet players and has a top 5 defense. No, he has one awesome receiver, Terry. He's got a pretty good run support. The O-line's not great. The receiver depth isn't great. The defense isn't that good either. The defense is kind of, I think, coached up by Quinn. I give him credit for that, but from a personnel perspective, it isn't that good. So they're literally in this spot because of Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels doesn't play at a superstar level. They're not here. They probably would have lost to Tampa. So, it's hard to do that. It's hard to pick against the better quarterback. I go back to my algorithm. If you guys listen to my playoff picks, I brought up my algorithm multiple times, is in playoff games, just look at who has the better coach and who has the better quarterback. You can make a strong argument that right now the Commanders have both those guys. And, I go back to my game, my prediction wildcard weekend. I did that algorithm for the Rams-Vikings game. Who has the better coach, who has the better quarterback, and I picked against it. I went with the Vikings, but it's clear McVay and Stafford is just better than O'Connell and Darnold. And that was on display in that game. That could end up coming out here, where it's like Dan Quinn, I think, is better right now than Nick Sirianni because he actually directly impacts the play. And Jane Daniels, without a shadow of a doubt, is playing better than Jalen Hurts. It's not even really that close right now. So going against my algorithm, I don't know if that's the smartest thing to do, but like I said, this will come down to the Eagles' defense. It's in Philly. You got Saquon coming off that game. But I have picked, every playoff round I've picked against Washington, and they've won. So it could very well happen again where I pick against the Commanders for the 3rd time in a row, and they go on to the Super Bowl. But now we can move on to the AFC Championship game between the Buffalo Bills and the Kansas City Chiefs for like the millionth time in the playoffs. I don't think we're ever going to get tired of seeing these teams play each other in the playoffs. This kind of feels like the Super Bowl, the Bills-Chiefs in Arrowhead. The Chiefs are obviously 1.5-point favorites in this game, which, I think that's just a testament to how good the Bills are playing right now. The fact that they're only 1.5-point underdogs in Arrowhead against the back-to-back champs, that shows you that Vegas is really, really respecting the Bills here, because this game is almost a pick'em in Arrowhead, which is crazy. So I'll tell you up front that I have some money on the Bills winning the Super Bowl that I put in, a couple weeks ago. I put in a couple future bets on the Bills to win the Super Bowl. So I want the Bills to win this game. I've got money riding on it. I think the whole country wants to see a new team. We're kind of all sick of the Chiefs. But I have to pick the Chiefs here. I don't know how you, in your right mind, could pick against the Kansas City Chiefs right now, with how many times we've seen them dominate these teams in the playoffs, but particularly this team, Buffalo. Like, every single time they've met in the playoffs, the Chiefs have won. Every single time. So not only do the Chiefs have the momentum of we're the back-to-back champs, we have the best QB, we have the best coach, we're in Arrowhead. They have all that, but on top of that, it's like we also have kind of this psychological advantage on the Bills where we've owned them time after time. So, you go back to last year, this game was in Buffalo in the divisional round, and the Bills couldn't get it done. I don't know. I don't know how in any sane mind you could pick the Bills to win this game. As much as I want to see it happen, I think the Chiefs are going to win this game because they win all these big games. And their defense is playing incredible. Even though the Bills' defense has improved, I still don't think it's anywhere near the Chiefs' defense. The Chiefs' defense has been really good all year long. It's why they have such a good record, because it's not like the Chiefs' offense has been lighting it up all year long. Like I said, they're more of a defensive-oriented team right now, and I think it's significantly better than the Bills' defense. And it just comes down to trust. I trust Mahomes more in Arrowhead. Like, how the fuck could you pick against the Chiefs? I think you're just out of your mind if you're picking the Bills in this one. So, I won't harp on it too much, but that's kind of my predictions. So I am predicting a rematch of the Super Bowl from a couple years ago where the Eagles and Chiefs met up. I think that's going to happen again with how these two games are looking right now. I want to be proved wrong. I want Josh Allen to get to a Super Bowl and win it. But I'm not betting, I'm not betting this particular game for the Bills. I just think that it'd be crazy. So that's my predictions for the championship round of the NFL playoffs. So we've only got 3 NFL games left, and then it's, a long 7-8 miserable months without football. So you got to cherish these games while we got them. If you made it this far in the video, really appreciate you listening. Please like and subscribe.